For the hobby, 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 for the hobby. Welcome to the For the Hobby podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hagedorn, and this is episode 5, The Starting 5. On this episode, I talked to 5 of my favorite people in the entire hobby. Since we're fresh off the NBA season, I'm titling this episode The Starting 5. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus as of late, so thanks for being patient as I continue to work on the podcast. I wanted to start out by thanking everyone who's listened to past episodes and who follows along on Instagram as I continue to share my passion for the hobby. The Starting 5. This episode consists of 5 conversations I had with some great friends of mine in the hobby. Those guys are Chris McGill, who co-founded the House of Jordans podcast and also co-founded a website called Card Ladder. Grant Slayton, aka Waldorf Stories on Instagram, who's an awesome 90s collector. Josh Johnson of Cardboard Chronicles fame and also co-founder of Card Ladder with McGill. My friend Dave, aka The Hobbyist23 on Instagram, who was my best collector buddy when I lived in New York. And last but not least, Rodman Martinez, aka Rodman PC on Instagram, who is also a dear friend of mine in the hobby. I had a lot of fun putting this episode together, as these guys are not only amazing hobbyists, but also just really great human beings. I truly believe that the quality of the hobby heavily depends on the quality of the people in it, and these 5 guys really represent the hobby well. Over the last few months, I spoke to these guys and we touched on a variety of topics, including their collecting journeys, their thoughts on the state of the hobby as a whole, and I asked all of them to give me their all-time NBA starting 5. I'm proud to say I've built a great relationship with all these guys, and it was a true pleasure to have them all on episode 5. Thank you all again for listening, and without further ado, here is the starting 5.
My name's Chris. I'm 33 years old. I'm a co-host and co-founder of the House of Jordans podcast, and I'm also a basketball card collector.
Chris, welcome to the podcast, man. I want to start with somewhat of a loaded question, and you and I have talked about this at length in the past, but why do you think basketball cards matter?
Basketball cards matter because on the most basic level, there's an incredibly vibrant community of people who love them, and we all have it in common. And it makes all of our lives infinitely more interesting and enjoyable. And it fosters some of the best relationships, and it inspires some of the most passionate creativity, whether it comes to making content for social media, making podcast, audio, video content, whether it's how you assemble your collection, whether it's how you share your passion. I mean, it's all those things. Like, that's right. Little pieces of cardboard that are historical artifacts and are embodiments of photography and art and technology and culture and sports fandom, all that. All those things come together, and they create a community that makes basketball cards not only matter, but that makes collecting basketball cards a way of life.
Well said. And I do think, like you said, it's a intersection of sports and collecting and art technology community. In the past, we've talked about that. I think also just the design and the camaraderie. And man, it is a way of life. It's something that has really taken on a life of its own in my life. And a lot of my friends, some of my best friends are from collecting cards.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And you know, it's amazing that we can foster these relationships, you know, a lot of times through digital mediums. And nonetheless, then when we have opportunities to get together, whether it's the national, you know, whether it's just making time, whether it's, hey, I'm in your city or you're in my city, you know, and you find yourself ending up connecting with some of the most interesting, positive, uplifting people, driven people, inspired people. I mean, that, you know, that's why cards matter, and that's why it's so exciting and fun to be a part of that. And I mean, you know, it's a question that gets me fired up when you ask me, like, why do basketball cards matter? Like, I mean, it becomes, it's almost something we take for granted. And so you have to step back, because once you get involved with it, it just becomes self-evident, like why, it's just, you just go on the ride and you never want to get off.
You touched on it with art and design and some of these other things, technology, but what do you think originally led to the massive popularity and growth of basketball cards in the 90s?
In the 90s, I think a lot of the same things that make it so popular now, the culture. Dude, sports card culture has always been this like really eclectic mix of lots of different people from lots of different walks of life who all find themselves on an equal playing field when traversing a card show and going from table to table, from dealer to dealer, from display case to display case. And there's one card for one type of collector over here. There's another card for another type of collector over here. Maybe we all collect the same player, but one person collects in one tier of cards, another person collects in another. But it's the same player. We can have the same conversations. It goes back to sports. Sports is a great equalizer. It doesn't matter who you are or from what walk of life you're from. We're all watching the same game on the same TV or in the same stadium. We're all looking at the same stats, and we can all come up with interesting takes and useful opinions and ways to express ourselves and say something interesting. So like sports is like a great equalizer on the fandom level that everybody can participate in and have something interesting to say about. And cards is similar. So there's like a really fun culture and community to cards, and it's also very niche. It almost feels underground. There's absolutely no pretense or elitism when you walk into a sports card show. It's just a bunch of people, roaming around, discreetly, incognito. We're all in Adidas pants and hoodies or whatever the case may be. It's just so chill. It's escapism at its absolute peak. So like that's like one like huge component I think that's always made it very popular is that is its culture. The culture of cards is just, there's something primal about it. There's something so non-judgmental about it. It's very, very easy for anybody to come in and fit in and have a lane. And then people are always welcoming you with open arms, and they're always willing to guide you and steer you and help you. So like the cultural part of it is huge, but then the coolness factor of it is super huge to me as well, because when you have a beautiful card in your hand, even if you know nothing about the hobby, there's something about it that will make that will create a gravitational pull around that card. It will draw you to it. So for example, let's say you were hosting like a party in your house and you were having 10 friends over and none of them know anything about the hobby, and you put out just randomly on a table somewhere, like as if it was a coffee table book or something, you just put 5 cards on a table and don't say anything about it and just let people walk around your house. People are going to be gravitated to those cards. They're going to pick them up and say, oh, what's this? These are basketball cards. Flip it over. Look at the stats on the back. Oh, this is kind of cool. Oh, look at this picture. This is interesting. And if it looks really cool, if it's shiny, if it has those sort of basic psychological appeals to people, there will be an undeniable magnetism about these tiny little pieces of art. And I would put it up against any other sort of cultural artifact from the last 3 decades. I mean, cards are among the most captivating, pieces of our culture and capturing moments in time that you can think of. So there's this intrinsic appeal to them that just makes them cool. And then you mix in the fact that recently, like in the 90s, these items took on significant market economic value. And that adds a whole nother layer of intrigue to it, because now not only is there an intrinsic appeal that people can relate to on a basic level, but there's also this secondary market validation that is giving a confirmation of just how cool and desirable these items are. And then you can sort of understand how the tiers of these items work. And that kind of adds the icing on the cake that, or that seals the deal in terms of why this hobby can be so addicting and so intriguing, is because we have a marketplace that's essentially a running scoreboard, and we have data that tells us the story of the hobby in one of the most objective ways that any story can be told, which is measuring how people spend their money. So you put all those factors together, the coolness factor, the market factor, the culture factor. You put those three factors together, and I think that explains the 90s and it explains today.
That's good stuff. Whenever I talk to people about cards, it can be hard to explain why I enjoy it so much and why it's even really a thing. And you just nailed it. So on that note, you have a strong social media presence and are always sharing a lot of really great tidbits. And the energy of cards on social media is really strong these days. It's a great medium to show your collection and then in turn express yourself through your collection. Can you talk specifically about that?
So, okay, social media. Like the ordinary Instagram post, Twitter account, Facebook profile, they're composed of like little pieces of content that we make. Maybe it's a pearl of wisdom that we want to share, which is what, Twitter is a good medium for that. Or maybe it's sharing a news story that matters to us and that we want other people to see. That's a form of expression and a form of telling people of who we are. And then when it comes to Facebook and Instagram, now you're really getting into sharing photographs and sharing visual imagery as a way of sharing things that matter to you and things that are important to you. Maybe it's a picture of an important event in your life, like your marriage or something like that. Maybe it's a picture of a vacation you took. Maybe it's a picture of you as a kid. But we share these things because this is us telling people about ourselves, and we gravitate to other people's pages and other people's profiles because we love and are fascinated by seeing other people tell the world about themselves. So there's a level of interactivity there that's like super human and super interesting. Well, look at the way that card profiles look. If you look at card profiles, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter, which are the primary two mediums for sharing sports cards, it's the same logic. It's the same thing. We're sharing things that we're passionate about and that are ways of telling the world about ourselves. But the medium through which we do it is through it's through the selection of cards that we pick, but it's even more. It's about the time and the care and the craft that we use to take a nice photograph so that there isn't a glare. And it's the background in the backdrop that we use to photograph the card that we really like. Are we going to use just a flat black backdrop? Are we going to take a picture of the card sitting on top of a jersey, on top of a magazine? What angle are you going to put the card at? So then now you're just kind of getting into this like very basic, primal, creative, I'm going to make something that looks aesthetically pleasing. And then the cherry on top, and the most important part of this, is what cards are you showing? Because who you collect matters a lot. Which brands you collect matters a lot. All these things are sending different signals to people that allow you to express yourself and distinguish yourself from the rest of the people, but also find commonalities with everybody else. So, for example, I collect two players. I collect Michael Jordan and Luka Doncic. When you look at my collection of Michael Jordan cards, when I explain to people why I chose to focus on Jordan when I came back in 2016, there was the obvious reasons, which is that I'm from the Chicagoland area, and I've always been a Chicago Bulls fan by blood, and it's just always been that way. But I also chose Jordan because one of the lessons I had learned in adulthood was the importance of brand and of prestige and of really like going for setting the highest goal, shooting for the stars. Those are really things that I had always, really come to appreciate and develop in adulthood. And so when I chose who to collect, I wanted to collect the very best. I didn't want to collect the second best or the third best. I wanted to go after the very best player. So now we're expressing a function of my personality by the fact that I collect Michael Jordan. And then you can see that trickle down to the cards that I collect. I want to collect the very best cards of Michael Jordan. Now, can I afford them all? No. Can I afford even his very best cards, period? No, I can't. But I can do my very best, act and behave as strategically as possible to acquire a collection that is the very best cards that I could acquire. So, this is how, to take it back to just the basic statement, these are some of the ways that we express who we are simply through a simple choice of this is the player, this is the card, and this is how I'm choosing to present it to the world.
That's great stuff, man. There's no doubt that people express themselves through their cards for sure. And in regards to elite players in the hobby, you collect Michael Jordan. Can you talk about the market of Jordan cards and then other big names like LeBron and Kobe?
So I would say this. Michael Jordan is the pinnacle of what I call market-setting players. And a market-setting player is somebody who leads the way. It's their card values lead the way, and they make it okay, and they give permission to other players who are in that set and other players who are considered to be GOATs. It makes it okay, and it gives permission to the market for those players to go up as well. So this has been the case with Jordan throughout the entirety of my time collecting him, is that his cards will go up in value, and then Kobe collectors will look at that and they will say, well, look at how this Jordan card has gone up. You know, obviously Kobe needs to go up too, because Kobe is right up there with MJ. And it's happening now with LeBron cards. So as one collector once put it, the Last Dance with Michael Jordan reset the market. It reset the entire card market. And that competition that you see sometimes happening between, you know, people who think LeBron is the greatest of all time versus people who think Jordan is the greatest of all time versus people who think Kobe is the greatest of all time. There's a strong competition between them to really want to prove their point and to support their, you know, whoever they think that is. And, you know, that debate and that energy is very present in the card market too. And so when you see Michael Jordan cards, you know, jumping up in value, LeBron collectors take notice of that, and they feel like that gives them permission for LeBron cards to go up in value. And Kobe collectors see that, and they feel like that gives them permission for Kobe cards to go up in value.
Yeah, no doubt there's heavy competition between some of these top collectors and some of the big names in history. So this is episode 5, the starting 5, and I want to end with, can you give me your all-time NBA starting 5?
My all-time starting 5 is at center. I have Hakeem, the Dream Olajuwon, my favorite player as a kid who I tried to emulate because I like to play the post as well. At power forward, I have LeBron. My 2 wings are Kobe and MJ. And my point guard, I'm picking John Stockton, but Steph Curry is right up there with him.
I love it. That's good stuff. John Stockton was one of the best players in the 90s and a great NBA Jam player as well.
Oh, yeah, dude. The Jazz are my go-to team on NBA Jam.
Amazing. Big thanks to Chris McGill for being on episode 5, and now one of the most amazing 90s collectors on the planet.
Grant Slayton, 32 years old, 90s Grail Hunter.
You are one of the most passionate basketball card collectors that I have ever met. So can you tell me a little backstory of how you first fell in love with basketball cards?
You know, like everyone else in the mid-90s, caught the bug. All my friends were collecting. My older cousins were collecting. It was just what everyone was doing. So fell in love with it pretty quick. And we're already watching sports. And it goes so, you know, hand in hand with following who you love to watch on TV. It just took me on to, you know, that new passion. You go from playing video games or action figures, all of a sudden you're collecting sports cards, and it just gripped you harder than anything.
Yeah, and as a kid, you're super impressionable. So how old were you when you first got into cards?
I was 8 years old.
Okay, and who were some of the guys that really pulled you into the hobby?
Grant Hill. We had the same name, first name, you know. I really liked Grant Hill. And like I said before, Brett Favre and the Packers, they were so good in that period that football, you know, Reggie White, any of those cards we could get was a big deal. But I always loved basketball. Grant Hill, Penny Hardaway, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan. There were so many great NBA players that if you opened a pack and you get, oh, there's a John Stockton and there's a Glenn Rice, and you knew all these names and personalities, and it was so much fun.
No doubt. So we love 90s cards. What do you think originally led to the popularity and growth of basketball cards in the 90s as a whole?
I think you have to backtrack a little bit into the 80s, and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird like set the NBA off on a new course. They ushered in that new era of viewers and popularity, rivalry. They made it so entertaining. I've heard back in those times, you'd be able to catch one game a week if you were, besides your locals, you maybe would catch one game a week. But these guys made it so popular and so entertaining that it really spurred something new. And then in the late 80s, now Michael Jordan really started. The torch was passed. Obviously, we just saw that with the documentary on him. So you have Michael Jordan now in the late 80s, early 90s. Just basketball's popularity, it infected every corner of the United States. And followed up with the Dream Team in 1992. I mean, it was just a perfect storm that led to such a fever pitch of basketball in the United States and then worldwide.
For sure. I think you're right. That groundswell and that perfect storm of Michael Jordan rising up and the Dream Team and Larry Johnson coming into the league, Shawn Kemp coming into the league, and then Shaq, I think, was the big catalyst where he was this popular dude who had a deal with Pepsi and Reebok and then Penny Hardaway, and then they did the movie Blue Chips, and NBA Jam was catching fire, and all the starter jackets and cards and everything just kind of came together at once in the early 90s, and it really did set the world on fire.
It's like a perfect storm of things that happened, and you just said it. Everywhere you go out in the 90s, go out for dinner somewhere or go to a pool, and there's a NBA Jam arcade game right there with your favorite players across the league. So many true personalities where it's almost was like another thing that was really popular in the 90s was WWF and WCW, and it was like they had their personalities that I almost like compare to that, like mythical type personalities with your big man like Akeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, and Karl Malone, David Robinson, and then even like guys like Dikembe Mutombo blocking every shot. These guys were like they just had such big personalities that I don't feel as much anymore.
What you just named was the best centers of all time. And then I think beyond that, to your point, I mean, I was a Bucks fan, loved Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, but you had to find other teams, and it was very popular for people to be fans of certain players or other teams. And so I loved the Bulls and MJ and the Magic and Shaq and Penny and the Sonics and Kemp and Peyton. And I think it was just this unbelievable time in sports culture that really was something that was captivating, and sports were on fire with Griffey, and football was hot with Barry Sanders and Deion Sanders, and for us, Brett Favre, and then guys like Elway and Marino and Jerry Rice. It was just an amazing time to be a sports fan. I think that these card companies did a great job capturing 90s culture through their design and art and just making these guys cardboard superheroes.
Absolutely, man. And you look again like at the football players you just named, like Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith, Jerry Rice, and all that. And now you look at your football players, and they have like 3-year windows.
Yeah, very different, very different. Yeah, guys were around for like a decade in the 90s, and now a lot of these guys are.
Peterson is probably the last like running back I can remember that did it for over a decade.
Yeah, no doubt. So we've talked about the arenas. You've interacted with the arenas. Can you talk about the design specifically of 90s cards?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what came before and what followed after, it's just like everything started with Fleer Skybox in the mid-90s, for me at least. And I know there's a lot of beauty to the older cards and all that, but they all have a pretty common, similar feel. There was not many breakthroughs, but with what the arenas did, that was groundbreaking, as big as a transition as you could have. Their vision to, bring a hip hop appeal or, more of an art feel to these cards, it just was beautiful. And what they put out is easily stood the test of time. It wasn't like, oh, well, that's the early stuff. They didn't really have it figured out. For some reason, they put out the best stuff like a couple of years into it with, the 96, 97, 98 years. They, it's like an artist that hit their best stretch. And it's just incredible when you look at it as a whole, how they pulled that off.
Yeah, I think that perfect storm in basketball culture that you talked about really happened and transferred over to a perfect storm in cards. You had these brands, Fleer and Skybox, merging, coming together, then investing a bunch of time, energy, and money, being able to invest in the technology, and the arenas are incredible designers. They had a great team to lean on as well. And then you also had the greatest athletes, in my opinion, the most marketable athletes on the planet, MJ, Penny, Kobe, Iverson, all these guys that came together in a perfect storm to create some of the greatest cards ever produced, in my opinion.
It's just it's incredible when you really take a step back and look at all these factors that came in that made this happen. The 90s hip hop culture that started and carried over, Run TMC, the Fab Five from Michigan, like there's just so much that was going on that when you go back to it, you just want to be a part of it again.
Yeah, that nostalgia is very heavy, and that is something that is important in sports culture. I think it's why a lot of people have come back to cards, is to try to get that feeling they had when they were 10 or 12 or 14 years old. And so we hunt the players from that era, but they also have grown to become some of the greatest athletes on the planet, which, historically they're Hall of Famers and MVPs and people that are extremely marketable. And MJ has still stood the test of time as the GOAT in the hobby.
Absolutely. What's kind of interesting, not off topic, but kind of, you look at guys that are like in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and a lot of them, they buy hot rods, and they buy Corvettes, they buy old Mustangs. They buy what takes them back to when they were 16 or younger, even, to that time in their life. So for this generation, there's still all that, but cards were a really big part.
100%. That's a great analogy. I think we all want to buy what we either couldn't afford or what we thought about back then. And even Nat does that. He pulled that green Kittles out of a pack, and now he's on the hunt for the whole set.
Yeah, no doubt.
So last question, what is your all-time NBA starting five?
Ooh. All right. Point guard, I'm going to take John Stockton.
Okay.
Shooting guard, I'm going with my guy, Kobe Bryant, which no one else will agree with. And then small forward, I will take probably LeBron James. Yeah. Power forward, Tim Duncan. And at center, Hakeem Olajuwon.
Wow. No Michael Jordan on the starting five.
Hey, I love Michael Jordan, but if I was making my team to watch, or whatever it would be, Kobe Bryant's my guy.
Wow, that's amazing. Big thanks to Grant for joining episode 5 of the podcast as well. And now Josh Johnson from Cardboard Chronicles.
I'm Josh Johnson, 31 years old, and I am a LeBron James and Penny Hardaway super collector.
Very nice. So let's start off with, how about we go back to when you first fell in love with basketball cards?
I started collecting basketball cards when I was probably 8 or 9. Back then, Penny Hardaway and Michael Jordan were kind of the big guys back then. The marketing for them had really picked up, and I really got into Penny Hardaway from the commercials I saw in his shoes and kind of all of his apparel. I had, jerseys and lockers and posters, and the sports cards were another thing. So I had picked up a lot of Penny Hardaway cards, just from trips to the mall or sports card stores with my parents. And so yeah, coming back in recently, it's been a big nostalgia hit for me to pick up some of the nicer Penny Hardaway cards that I was never able to get as a kid or didn't even know existed, to be honest.
And from there, you became a pretty big penny collector, and then that evolved to LeBron James. Can you talk about, since you got back in the hobby, how your collecting game has changed?
Yeah, when I got back in, it was mostly focused on the stuff I had wanted to get as a kid, so that was Penny Hardaway. And then my current favorite player is LeBron. I've been a fan of his since his rookie year, and I just figured, if I'm going to collect Penny from my childhood, I might as well collect LeBron, my favorite, as an adult. And so I've always kind of focused on those two players and tried to pick up as many cards as I could. And LeBron being such a, huge icon in the game of basketball, being one of the all-time greats, it kind of worked out with, some of the investment strategies that I wanted to put into cards at the same time as collecting what I enjoy. So LeBron was a great decision, both financially and also just for my enjoyment in cards.
Yeah, and I've watched your collecting journey kind of unfold. It's been super interesting, and I've seen your competitive nature come out, and the evolution of your collection and Cardboard Chronicles, the YouTube show you run, has been just fascinating to me. So can you touch on that, just kind of how it's evolved and how that competitive nature has grown in the last few years?
Yeah, sure. I first kind of started just picking up cards that I enjoyed looking at, like refractors, shiny stuff that reminded me of the 90s. And as I got more into it, I found other people had different styles of cards, autographs, jerseys. And yeah, my competitive spirit kind of kicked in. And through my YouTube channel, Cardboard Chronicles, I sort of interviewed people that have seen cards and had cards that are a lot, more expensive and nicer than what I had at the time. So I just sort of kept evolving with it. And, as the hobby grew financially and some of the cards that I've been buying early had become, more valuable, I was able to kind of turn some of those profits into nicer cards, and it just kind of snowballed from there into now I basically collect, everything high-end LeBron and Penny Hardaway, and I've even dabbled in other players, just to kind of change it up and kind of like diversify what I have a little bit. But yeah, mostly the PC has evolved into really high-end LeBron stuff, and right now I'm just sort of like using my capital that I've gotten from previous good decisions to kind of continue it and keep the snowball going.
Yeah, the analogy I give to your average Joe or Jane that I talk to, I liken it to trading a paperclip for a house on Craigslist, like some of those kids did back in the day. Can you talk about your hustle over the last couple of years to take certain cards and then they increase in value, sell them, and kind of continue to level up? The way you've leveled up over the last couple of years has been really impressive. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. I think it's kind of what makes cards fun, actually, is, kind of that chase to keep getting the next big card and keep, upgrading your collection as it goes. And for sure, like I think I started with like a couple $100, just buying like cheap Topps Chrome refractors of LeBron, and those have like exploded in value ever since then. So I was able to turn just a few $100 into, a pretty sizable, expensive collection today. I've obviously like added money into the pot as I've gone, but for the most part, it's been, turning cards over into bigger cards and kind of like ever expanding and growing the collection.
My favorite thing about the hobby is similar to yours, the camaraderie. So we spent some time last year at the National, and I really got a first-hand look at your ability to curate a really great group of collectors. We had a meetup, and just watching you roam the National and make deals and connect with people who watch the show was really impressive and really great to see. So can you touch on that, the camaraderie piece, and just how you curate groups of collectors?
Yeah, I think, as humans, we kind of gravitate towards social aspects. We're social beings, and I think the hobby itself lends itself to that social aspect better than anything else I've ever been involved in. And a lot of it, you don't even have to be in person, with the social media and the internet the way it is today. And kind of the shared experiences you get through cards is really like, it's unmatched for me in the rest of my day to day. I've met so many people, made so many deals, and picked up a lot of great friends along the way, and people I consider to be, my best friends and ones that I'll always, have going forward. So it's a huge part of it for me. I'd say it's the majority of what keeps me in cards is just kind of the people that I run into and that I connect with daily. I always joke to my wife that like I communicate with my card friends, way more than even my work colleagues or, regular friends, whatever you want to call them. So the people I've met through cards are, very close to me, and I always look forward to that.
So with that said, I'll skip ahead a little bit. With the camaraderie of cards and how it's exploded, what do you think the future holds for the hobby as far as content creation and the evolution of how things will play out here in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more big name content creators coming into the game, mostly just because of, the increased exposure through these big sales and all the different people covering, how much money is being spent in the hobby. You've got like these almost $1 million sales of modern sports cards now, and you're going to get a lot of attention and new people coming in, more media coverage. So we'll have some big name, content creators coming in and kind of taking over, and you'll have companies trying to create different software tools, and there'll be a bunch of different things to expand on the hobby itself. I think we're going to find, better suited tools for transacting sports cards. So I think that it's just going to keep growing, to be honest. I know there's talk of like maybe a bubble or things are growing too fast, but there's just too many people in it, and there's too much excitement over it. And everybody that I know that collects cards, they wouldn't sell these cards for any amount of money. So to me, the cards themselves are valuable because people actually want them. And, that's kind of what keeps driving these prices up. You keep having more and more people join, and the cards are actually desirable versus stock. You just kind of have the monetary value attached to it. There's not really a physical or sentimental attachment. So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds, and I think people are really drawn to that right now.
I agree. Well said. I think you're going to see a lot of pretenders coming in and out of the hobby in the coming years, but the true collectors, the guys that love it, the girls that love it, that really have a place in the hobby, that find their lane and find a way to collect and maybe make money on it, but also just genuinely connect with other hobbyists and the people that really take the time and put the energy and money and effort into understanding the nuances of the hobby. I think that's where we're going to see some growth. And I think you're going to see people come and go and fall off if they don't see success instantly.
Yeah, you'll hear me talk about that a lot on my channel, and also just in my day-to-day with different people. I always bring up, you always hear people talk about how, they're annoyed by certain investors coming into the hobby or certain types of people that come in and just look for the quick buck. And I always try to turn it around and point out that a lot of those people that come in with that initial mindset end up changing their minds once they actually start buying cards, and it turns into more of a focus into the cards themselves and the collecting. I've seen it many times where someone will come in looking to just kind of flip and make money, and they end up staying long term, and they build these amazing collections because they get hooked on the community, they get hooked on the cards that are in it. So it's our job as people that are currently in the hobby to sort of welcome those people and show them, how the hobby really functions and how it is a community and how it's not just about money. And we can slowly turn those people around.
Yeah, it's a really easy hobby to fall in love with, I got to say.
Yes, it is. And there's the people that are sort of, the faces of the hobby, I'll say, are extremely welcoming people. And we're always looking for new people to join the hobby. And I get tons of DMs on Instagram every day, people asking me questions. And I always make it a point to respond to everyone just because, you never know what's gonna happen long term. So I just, I try to help everyone come into the hobby and show them the same excitement that I feel every day. And I think that'll work out for the hobby long term if we keep doing that.
I agree. So can you talk about your personal collection, Penny LeBron specific?
Sure. My collection right now is hyper focused on 90s Penny Hardaway. So I have a binder. It's got about 300 cards in it from the lowest end stuff, 50-cent cards all the way up to, I'd say, about $1,000 cards. Anything 90s, mostly shiny stuff, a few autographs. And then I have a few really high-end Penny Hardaway pieces outside the binder that I have graded. So I've got a green Precious Metal Gems Penny Hardaway. That's probably his most well-known card, probably his most expensive card. And then I've got some Rubies cards from the 90s, Essential Credentials, Penny Hardaway. And then my LeBron collection is really hyper-focused on high-end mid-2000s cards and rookie year. So I've got, from the rookie year, I've got the 2003 Topps Chrome Gold Refractor, which is probably his best refractor. And I've got the Exquisite Collection RPA, which is a rookie patch auto, number to 99. That's probably his most well-known card of all. And then past that, I've got a bunch of gold refractors from Topps Chrome. I've got a Prism Gold from 2013, and then I've got some other like exquisite patch autograph cards. I've got one with a duel with Michael Jordan on it from Exquisite. And outside of that, I've got a few LeBron cards in my binder, but not very much. It's mostly focused on the high-end stuff at the current time.
Nice. Yeah, it's been really fun to see your collection grow. I know when we first started talking, you had a lot of penny stuff, and then as you got into LeBron, had some really nice pieces, and then when you bought the RPA, I think that was a defining moment in the hobby for you.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of started this, I don't know if I started the trend, but I kind of pushed hard on it on my channel, on my Instagram, talking about consolidation. And I had built up a pretty decent-sized PC of LeBron, and I kind of wanted to try something different where I sold a bunch of it and kind of moved it into one giant card. So I was able to sell a good portion of my collection. I'd say about like 2/3 of the LeBron cards that I had. I kept my favorites, and then I used the funds from that I had made, throughout the years of smart purchases, and I was able to take that money and buy the LeBron RPA, which is, his most expensive, most, sought after card. And that kind of like established me as like a really high-end LeBron collector. It opened up some more doors to other LeBron cards, and it kind of just like got things going for me a little bit heavier into the high-end LeBron. So it was a fun journey to own all those cards and collect them through the years, and then kind of like turn it into one giant card. It's kind of like the paperclip to the house scenario where you just sort of like keep working your way up. And in cards, it's not as easy as trading up to get the house. Sometimes you got to sell. Sometimes you got to trade. So in this scenario, I had to sell some stuff to get the LeBron RPA.
Yeah, and then in that same time period, the green penny PMG fell on your lap as well, yeah?
Yeah, so the day after I bought the LeBron RPA at auction, which was a very public, large auction, so everyone kind of knew what I paid, and it was like this big thing. And then the next day, someone messaged me that I'd been talking to for a while, and I knew he had the green Precious Metal Gems penny, but I never thought he'd sell it. And he offered it to me for sale the next day, and I was kind of like, dude, I just spent all my money on the RPA. But, in this hobby, when that stuff comes up, you got to kind of figure it out. So I had to sell a couple extra cards that I really didn't want to, but, had to make the sacrifice to get both of them. So I was able to get my 2 Grail cards within a matter of 24 hours. That was pretty nuts.
It's so funny how you bought the RPA and that became a centerpiece of your collection, and then what was your Grail for so many years was almost an afterthought.
Yeah. I think that's mostly just because of how much it costs. But I mean, if you really knew me and got down to talking about it, the green penny means just as much or more than the RPA. I think I get more questions about the RPA and more people are interested in it. But for me personally, if I just sat down, by myself in my office and looked at both of those cards, I generally am going to stare at the green penny a little bit more. Well,
the Cardboard Chronicles logo is fashioned after the green PMG.
That's correct. It was mostly towards the MJ, but if you know about the set, every card design had 2 players that shared that design, and the 2 players that shared my favorite design is Penny and Michael Jordan, who's obviously like the biggest, the best player in the whole set and the most expensive. So it's kind of cool to have Penny and MJ doing the same pose where they're kind of flying through the air and have the ball stretched out in front of them for a dunk. So I was able to take that design and make it from my Cardboard Chronicles logo, and you can kind of interpret it as Jordan or Penny. You know, I lean towards Penny, but Jordan is kind of the more iconic pose, you know, for the dunk photo. So it kind of worked out where it made this interesting logo design where it's like two players, but it's my favorite player, but it's also MJ, which is kind of everyone else's favorite.
And it's safe to say that green Penny PMG found a good home.
It did, yes.
So I will end with this. I always love this story. You have the LeBron James gold refractor from Topps Chrome, and there's an unbelievable story behind how that card surfaced and then how you got it. Can you tell the brief version of that story?
Yeah, so I was talking to a friend, and he showed me a post about a rookie Topps Chrome gold refractor numbered 1 out of 50 from LeBron, and I messaged the owners of it, got in contact with them, was talking to them on the phone, and we did some Skype chats, and I basically found out that they had gotten the card out of a Goodwill auction. They bought a box of random assorted basketball cards on a Goodwill.com website, and we found the auction. They paid $80 for it, and they bought it because they saw some 2003 magazines on top, and they thought, "Oh, that's LeBron's rookie year. We'll buy it. Hopefully, get lucky." They're going through the boxes. At the bottom, there's a box that says "Good Cards." They open it up, and in there is the 1 out of 50 Topps Chrome gold refractor LeBron James. So I, told them I'd love to have that in my collection. Made them an offer. We came up with a deal, and then we weren't comfortable shipping it. They weren't, so I offered to fly out to them. So I flew to their home in Texas, and we filmed an episode of Cardboard Chronicles, documented what happened, and then I was able to get it graded with Beckett and also get a custom label on the Beckett label that says, Goodwill LeBron 1 out of 50 to kind of commemorate where it came from and kind of the amazing story that went along with it.
Unbelievable. That is a story that they will tell their grandkids and that we need to share more. I feel like that's such an incredible story, and I hope LeBron hears about that someday.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's something I'll never forget. Obviously, it's a story that I'll always have with me, and I'm really big on stories connected to different cards. I don't just like to buy a card. I love to have. I'll pay extra if I can buy the story. That's even what I told them when I bought it. I raised my offer because I said I'm buying the story of you guys. I'm buying the Goodwill story. I'm buying me flying out there and kind of making it this whole thing. And so I try to do that with a lot more cards that I buy. I don't just buy the most expensive thing that comes up or something that catches my eye. It's got to kind of connect to me on a story level. And I think a lot of other collectors can relate to that. And they love to, think of ways to make their collection unique. And one of the ways you can do that is through how you got the card or where it came from and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there is intrinsic value with the provenance of the card for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I speak for all of us in the hobby when I say we appreciate the storytelling you're doing and the curating of collectors and just being a positive influence in the hobby. It's really important and special. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no doubt. I like to think that I've played a small part in the growth of the hobby just because of the connection. I think, having that human connection has been a big part of people's excitement towards the hobby and seeing other people do it and, giving people that common interest within cards. And they see maybe someone else in a video that reminds them of themselves or cards they used to collect as a kid and gets them back into it. I've always really pushed on that and not tried to make it as much about myself, but more about the other people I interview and the different collections I've come across throughout the years. And I really try my best to highlight all the different collectors out there and all the different styles of collecting. And I think that just connects, more infinitely outward towards other people. And I think we're seeing some growth, hopefully, from that.
Yeah, and we appreciate it. On the basketball front, the fun question is, who do you have in your all-time starting five?
I have this answer prepared. I thought about this, and I'm going to make it where my top 5 all-time are in the starting lineup, and I'm going to do that by making LeBron James the point guard. I think he would be a nightmare as a point guard on any team, and you start fitting him with other forward grades. It's almost impossible. And then shooting guard, I'll go with Michael Jordan. I don't really need to say much more about that. He's the GOAT. MJ, easy spot to fill. He was a shooting guard. That one's easy. Small forward, I'm going to put Kobe Bryant. I'm going to make him go out of his comfort zone a little bit, but I think he can do it. He's tall. I think he can figure out the small forward position. Power forward, I'm going to go with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That one's the toughest fit, I think. He's more of a natural center, but that's because I want to put Wilt Chamberlain at center. Most dominant player at his position of all time. Just absolutely mind-blowing statistics for him when he played. And those are my top 5 players of all time. I know that some people might argue with me on Kobe maybe not being in the top 5, but for me, he's definitely in there. He's just a ferocious competitor, an amazing basketball player, and an icon. So those are my top 5.
Very interesting top 5 and starting 5. I don't know how the chemistry of that team would play out with Jordan and Kobe, but I respect it. Any last words for the Hobby episode 5?
Yeah, I hope that, the hobby finds you in some way. I hope that, you can integrate the hobby into your daily life somehow and fall in love with it and meet people and start buying some cards that appeal to you and grow from there.
Love it. Appreciate the support as always, man.
No problem, dude.
Thanks to Josh Johnson, who took the time to be on episode 5. A true pioneer in the industry, one of the first content creators and an inspiration to many. So thanks again to Josh. And now a good friend of mine from New Jersey, the Hobbyist 23.
I'm Dave, aka the Hobbyist 23 on Instagram, high-end rookie card collector and Jordan insert collector from Jersey.
Love it. So what years did you originally collect basketball cards?
I started collecting at the behest of my mom, believe it or not. Like, she didn't mention card collecting specifically, but she thought it'd be beneficial for me to take up on a hobby. She encouraged me to find something I'd be passionate about. I'll explain why. I think I was about 9 or 10 at the time. And as you know, Jordan, I'm bilingual. And as a new kid from South Korea and still foreign in the U.S., she suggested I take up on a new hobby as a way to, I guess, assimilate myself to new surroundings in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And when MJ completed his first three-peat with the Bulls, I think it was against the Suns. I believe that was from 94 playoffs during 93-94 NBA season. So, yeah, I guess 1994. That was the year I got into collecting. I was simply floored, man, as a kid watching MJ play for the first time on TV. Just got hooked instantly. I saw him do things on the basketball court from TV that I didn't think was humanly possible. So, yeah, so I wanted to find a way to stay engaged. And, one day I saw a pack of basketball cards at a convenience store, and rest is pretty much history.
Yeah, so once you saw those cards, though, you bought them. There was kind of a visceral connection to them. Right away, you were hooked?
Yeah. So I spotted the packs, and then I asked my mom, Mom, can I buy these? I was like, sure. And it was 93-94 Top Stadium, and one of the cards I got was a Jordan freaking Flyer. Okay, and that was the card. And once I got that, I was like, dude, my first Jordan card. I store this, and then just start a collection. And that was it. I haven't looked back. I did look back. It just, I stopped collecting after a certain period of time, but, that was my first Jordan card.
Yeah. So when you were a kid then, you were off and running, you went to card shows, card shops. Kind of, can you tell me about that and maybe what some of your favorite memories were?
One thing that I remember most fondly is hanging out at a back of Krauser's, those small grocery store,
mm-hmm.
with a couple of my buddies, and we call it D Corner. We'd spend a couple hours there nearly every weekend, busting open packs, eating junk food, and talking about girls and whatnot. We opened a good bit of 96 Topps back then, and no exaggeration, I probably pulled about 2 dozen Kobe rookies. I just wish I took that card more seriously because, I had 1 or 2 sitting in my binder, but I think I had way more that were tossed around like ragdolls, just put them in scratched up top loaders without penny sleeves, just keeping them nonchalantly, just putting them in places where I'd simply forgotten. So, you see what those things are going for now, right?
It's just crazy how all the top stuff is blown up. Kobe's rookie and LeBron's rookie, those Topps cards are going crazy.
Yeah, man. Ever since 2020, man, everything's a fair game. Everything's gone up. It's been crazy, like you said.
Yeah. So something from childhood. You found your binder of Hakeem Olajuwon or a page. Can you tell me about that? It seems a pretty crazy story. You're just looking for cards at your parents' house, and just walk me through that step by step.
So my mom invites me over with my wife for dinner. So naturally we go over there, and just killing some time while just the table's getting set, dinner's getting ready. So I'm just chilling in my old room, and Mom, like, have you seen my old basketball cards? Yeah, she's like, yeah, there's probably some laying around in the basement or in the garage. So I go out there, and sure enough, there's a couple of my binders, just old binders, just chilling in the garage, right? So I bring them into my room, and I just merely flip through them, and first few pages, nothing special, nothing stands out, just a couple of like team leader inserts and just a bunch of random base cards, and flip through around page 5, I guess, just something red. I noticed it instantly, man. Instantly. The PMG red. I was like, what? I had this? It was just mind-blowing, man. It's just mind-boggling. So I took it out, and I actually got it RCR'd. I think it came back with 7.5. But it's like Hakeem it's not, he's not somebody I would like player collect per se. So I just, I got rid of it, but I wish I still had it, to be honest. But yeah, it's just wild, just looking back.
Yeah, so for those listening, going through your binder and you find a page of Hakeem Olajuwon, who's an all-time great.
Yeah,
and you found the red PMG, and so got it raw card graded, right? And then what did you end up selling that for?
I think it was a little bit over 2,000.
So to find a binder full of cards from when you were a kid and then find a $2,000 card, I think that's something we all dream of.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, it's something I didn't expect. I was just flipping through it for like nostalgia, just being back home and just looking through my childhood binder. And little did I know I actually had a PNG red in there. So yeah, it was a really cool find, man.
Yeah, I often think about how many people have binders laying around they don't know about that have PMG greens, PMG reds.
Oh, so many people. Like people that aren't like oblivious to what's going on in this hobby. That's just chilling in their binder. So many people.
I love it. I mean, hopefully we can keep unearthing those in the coming years.
Yeah,
I think.
Jordan, I texted you like not more than an hour after I found the card in the binder. Do you remember getting that text from me?
Yeah, I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
I was like, dude, I was just laughing. Well, it was a great moment.
You were laughing all the way to the bank, that's for sure. I started roaming around card shows in New York, and I met you. Do you remember the day and how we originally met?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I remember it well. We were at Westchester Car Show in White Plains. We were each minding our own business. Then I heard you mention something about Jordan inserts. Then I was like, yo, hey, check this out. Look what I got here. And it was at Rob's booth. So he reminds me at shows whenever I run into him. He'll be like, hey, Dave, remember your buddy Jordan? I introduced you guys. Don't forget.
Yeah, he'll let you know every single time you see him, too.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's
a great guy. So, and then once we started talking, we followed each other on Instagram, kind of opened up a whole world. I was new to the hobby, so I can actually give you credit for kind of opening me up to some of these other collectors and kind of giving me the landscape. You had such a good grasp on the hobby at that point. I mean, what year did you get back into the hobby at that point?
So yeah, I was saying earlier, I drifted away from the hobby probably the time I was a junior or senior in high school. Just had a ton of things going on, and this hobby of mine just sort of got lost in the shuffle. This is me before eventually leaving home for college. So I got hooked again in 2013, I think, around 2013. So let me explain to you how I got back. So you're an Aggie fantasy football guy, right?
Yeah.
So I actually won my fantasy football league that year. I still remember my team. I had Calvin Johnson, who set yards for a receiver in a season, and Adrian Peterson, who I think won the MVP that year, and also a guy named Alfred Morris. Like, he had one good season that came in his rookie year that year.
Redskins.
And, yep, exactly. And Darren Sproles was just a beast in PPR league. So I lost one regular season game. Otherwise, my team went undefeated. So,
wow.
So the reason I'm telling you this is my friend paid out my fantasy football winnings through PayPal. It was $1,000 flat, and it wasn't like I needed the money. So I figured, I treat myself and buy something nice with it. So where can I use PayPal to shop? And I answered to myself, eBay. Okay, so what can I buy from eBay? Okay, gee, so I wonder how much a card that I own sell for now, and if eBay even sells these things. So sure enough, I type in Michael Jordan top spark plugs, and I was actually surprised to see there are about 50 to 100 listed, right? And they were actually selling for like 10, 12 bucks, and I was just blown away by it. And after that, I typed in a card that I really coveted as a kid, but I could never find it or pull it from packs myself. You know, we all have interests like that, right? Like growing up and having a card that you really want, but you can never get, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it was a Jordan Power in the Key. Okay, so saw a copy I like. It was listed for 50 bucks. Boom, purchased it and haven't looked back since.
So what else did that 1,000 go to?
I deposited 500. I withdrew it to my checking account, and the rest of the 500 I spent all on cards. So Power in the Key was the first one, and then I proceeded to buy 93 Finest Refractor and a PSA 9, which
Wow.
I still have.
Amazing. Yeah, that's one to hang on to. I think that's one of the most beautiful cards. I have a PSA 8, and then I have a raw copy as well.
Yep, I know you do. Beautiful cards, my man.
So you and I have connected, and I think it's one of the most fun parts of the hobby is just meeting new people and
Absolutely.
kind of some of that. But what are some of your favorite things about the hobby?
I'd say ownership of the cards. I mean, that is what the essence of this hobby is, right? The ownership and collectability. I mean, it's fun to flip through your cards and appreciate the beauty, complexity, rarity, and just everything else that comes with it. Also, as you mentioned, forging relationships are fun. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I mean, I can't tell you how many great people I met from this hobby. Whether by selling online, attending shows, buying, and just simply engaging. So, yeah, there are a ton of opportunities to be had in that regard. And Jordan, let me also expand on this this question. So, I also appreciate the diversity. I mean, you can meet, and I've met basketball card collectors, from pretty much every corner of the globe. I'm talking about Europe, Asia, and then even places like Puerto Rico. I mean, I have a diverse group of friends in terms of their background and nationality, in person. So I think that's pretty special, man. All those things. Yeah,
it brings us together. That's the whole point of For the Hobby too, is to bring together like-minded people. And we all love cards, and we all have a lot in common when it comes to what we collect and who we collect. And man, it's a unique underground kind of subculture.
I couldn't agree more, my friend.
I mean, I got to say, since we met, you and I have talked to different collectors, and we went to a local card shop. We ripped some cards. I mean, you are what's right with the hobby. You're a great dude, and a lot of these guys, they speak very highly of you. You're easy to deal with. You're just really a true collector, a true hobbyist in the sense of the word. So, props to you on that. And, thank you for being one of the good ones. Tell me the story. We met up and went to a local card shop, and I went ham at that place. And then at one point,
you spent like $500. it's like a 99-cent, like a penny, like pawn shop.
Story of my life, Dave. Story of my life. So we did that. We went ham. We also met up in Jersey and ripped some cards. And then the one fun one was we ripped a box of 93, 94 Finest. Tell me about that.
Yeah. It was an oddity in a way. I mean, there were every pack had a refractor, like 2 refractors.
Every single pack, I think, had 2 refractors.
Yeah, it was just, and you and I are wondering if it was resealed. I'm kind of skeptical at that because it would take a lot of effort and tracking down of cards, and only to sell for $100. You know what I mean?
True.
It takes a lot of effort. And when we ripped the box, it didn't appear to me that the box was resealed, resealed. Like, did you get that impression?
We were sitting there ripping. We are getting 2 autographs.
Oh yeah, it was in my car. That's right. Outside.
Yeah, because we went to a casino.
Outside of the bar.
We went to the casino,
okay.
And then we got back and we ripped a box, and it was 2 refractors in every pack, and it was weird. The only major star we got was like Sean Kemp, but you're right. I mean, I don't think they'd go through the trouble, and if they would reseal it, why would they put 2 refractors in every pack when it was just 2 a box?
Yeah, it's a lot of work just to make like $100, if that, right?
Yeah, so part of me thinks...
And Sean Kemp, like, that one actually came in the second, if not the last pack of the box.
I know.
Right?
So
every single one was a common refractor.
It's so weird. They're all common. I still have all the refractors. And part of me wants to just get a hold of somebody who was at Topps back then and ask if they did hot boxes, because I did get another box I ripped with my other buddy where we got one refractor per pack. And I don't know if it was just multiple hot boxes or what they did, but still haven't pulled a Jordan. I have 4 sealed boxes still of that. I just wonder if there's an MJ in one of those.
Yeah, I mean that was I just have a hard time grasping that box, because you do see hot boxes once in a while from Fleer, like Skyboxes. Ultra even had boxes that were called like Hot Box or Hot Packs.
Yeah,
remember those things?
Yeah,
and those cards that came out like even have like label like on the card like Hot Pack.
Yeah,
and those stem from like Fleer Ultras.
Very odd. I'm gonna
never from Tops though.
I'm gonna keep digging into that, but that was super fun. So I mentioned I think you're a great hobbyist and you're kind of a model citizen of how to carry yourself in the hobby and how to build great relationships and how to kind of in a classy way hunt down cards. So coming from you, what would you say makes a great hobbyist? What are the traits?
I would say just being honest about everything, right? So be descriptive if you're selling a damaged card, quote unquote. And, just be courteous and respectful to others. I think simple things can go a long ways. Also, help out your peers or fellow collectors if you come across a card that somebody is chasing. Alert them, give advice, and just be friendly and genuine. I think it bodes well.
Yeah, I would agree. Good advice. So there's been a huge hobby explosion really over the last year, but over the last few years, and really over the last 6-7 years that you and I have been in it.
Yeah,
so.
Man. Yep.
What would you say has led to that big explosion and that resurgence?
That's a great question. I mean, we're seeing an influx of new investors coming in, and where there's money, people are going to follow suit. And I think card market is also starting to mold, I guess, slowly evolve into mainstream. People read about record-breaking sales on ESPN, and that can create a buzz. And you see these card contents across all social media platforms. I mean, things are happening, man. And also, everyone is just so intertwined in this hobby. What I mean by that, I'll give you an example. You're a FAR collector, Jordan, right? So at some point, you're gonna want to expand on that and start buying cards of other players to just balance out your collection or to simply diversify. Just human nature. So NBA collectors shifting focus to football to gain a side piece, or vice versa. Panini collectors or hoarders, that want 90s MJ inserts, and guys that mainly collect 90s MJ inserts, they want to diversify and find a niche in other cards like Prism or other LeBron rookies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And also Zion's hype and impact has been pretty much undeniable for this hobby. I think his cards have had a trickle-down effect, in my opinion. You see Shaq's rookie cards, such as like Beam Team or Upper Deck that weren't so highly thought after. Now they're selling for thousands as a PSA 10. I think new money is not scared from what I'm seeing. You couple that in with Kobe's untimely death, MJ's last dance, and LeBron's ring chase with LA as his career winds down. And also like coronavirus pandemic, with people staying home to fuel their emphasis on the hobby. It's just all been a perfect storm in my eyes.
Yeah, that's really well said. That's well said. I think the beauty of the hobby is there's so many things, like you mentioned, that you can fall in love with. And if it's Michael Jordan or Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or the new rookie, Luka from a couple years ago, or Zion from this year, and even Ja Morant and some of these guys. And then, of course, rookies now with Joe Burrow and some of this really great draft class. So there's just so many brands and so many old school and new school and breaks and, investing and flipping and all these things. There's just so many great traits of the hobby right now that are it's a confluence coming together in that perfect storm you mentioned. And I think it's just a beautiful thing.
One negative side to that, though, is there's a lot of manipulation going on. So you have to be wary about that. I mean, you got to check bidding history, seller's rep, feedbacks that are exchanged. You need to do your due diligence. I mean, make sure you're not being taken or shilled, as they say. Do some research and ask questions. You can't assume on eBay ending price is the new market price.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. I think you're seeing a lot of people bringing attention to the hobby. But I think that is the most important thing to know is do your homework, do your due diligence, make sure you're reaching out to people, ask questions, connect with people, find reputable people who are good human beings that want you to win. And I think that's very important.
Absolutely. Just be in touch with people. Just be communicating. Yeah, just stay constantly in touch with people. Ask questions, man. As simple as that.
For sure. So the important thing let's talk about is some cards. The reason we're talking, we love cards. What are some of your favorite cards?
Oh, man, so I flip through my cards probably a couple times a week, and I think it changes quite a bit depending on when you ask. Just some of the cards that I love, MJ Grand Finale, Classic 61, the Jambalaya, and his Star XRC 84 101. Those cards I just love looking at. I could just stare at those all day. And Patrick Mahomes Prism Gold is another one of my favorite cards that I'm looking at right now.
You're looking at
those cards I just love.
You own it?
Yes.
Wow. I forgot you own the Mahomes Gold.
Yeah, I think. I'm pretty sure you knew, but you must have forgotten.
I must have forgot. What is that graded?
Yeah, I graded PSA 9.
Wow.
There are 3 PSA 10s. This is the only PSA 9, but I just can't find any fault. It's perfectly centered. I don't see any whiting in the back. It looks nice. I think people mention PSA with their pop control, and that might apply here because this is the only PSA 9.
Man, that's a nice card. The Mahomes Prism Gold rookie out of 10. That's crazy. Mahomes has just been on fire. It's pretty crazy, and they very well could be back in the Super Bowl. So to shift gears a little bit to basketball, you are a part of the starting 5 here on episode 5, and I wanted to get your all-time starting 5 for the NBA.
Now, that is a fun question. Okay, and you said all-time starting 5, right? Not top 5.
All-time starting 5.
Awesome. So I would go LeBron at the 1 at the point, and then I'll put MJ at the 2, and Larry Bird, small forward, and then Tim Duncan, who I would say is the best power forward of all time, and then I got Wilt at center. So center position is definitely the most interchangeable out of the 5. I think you can put Kareem, Shaq, or even Bill Russell ahead of Wilt, and it'd be fine. But the 100-point man is my guy, and I'm putting him in my starting 5.
I love it. Can't go wrong with any of those guys you mentioned.
No, you can't.
Thank you for taking the time. You're a great hobbyist and a great friend, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're one of the finest people I met in this hobby, man, and you just done a lot in such a short time.
I appreciate it. Yeah, having fun, man. That's the key. Always got to have fun and keep spreading the love.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to Dave, a.k.a. The Hobbyist23 on Instagram for being one of the starting 5. And now, last but not least, one of my favorite dudes in the entire hobby, Rodman.
I'm Rodman Martinez. I'm 35. I'm a passionate Michael Jordan collector, and I'm based in Honduras, Central America.
You and I have connected and talked a lot about basketball cards. We spent some time together at the National, and you are one of my favorite collectors based on your love of cards. So can you tell me first how you first got into and fell in love with basketball cards?
Well, Jordan, I'm also a huge fan, first of all, of the For the Hobby podcast. Really excited to be part of this. Back to how I got started in collecting. Well, I think most of us started early 90s when we were little kids. I first of all started, I was a basketball fan. Started watching Jordan and the Bulls in the early 90s. I remember vividly MJ and the USA team heading to Barcelona on the Dream Team. And as a kid, that was incredible. I mean, just seeing them on an international platform, and back in the day, they were superstars, and I remember that clearly. How I got started in collecting cards. Well, my passion for basketball, my passion for Jordan got me into cards when I was, I think it was 91, 92. I was probably in second grade. A friend of mine and his older brother were into cards, and as a kid, I always had some inclinations towards collecting. I mean, if we went on family trips or stuff like that, I would. I mean, if we went to the beach or something like that, I would collect sand and take it back home. I used to collect keychains or stuff like that from each travels and or each countries we visited or cities, and I kind of had that like collecting habit. That kind of like took me into cards in a very natural way, and I think that's how I started. The beauty of opening a pack and looking for a Jordan. I mean, that chase came in naturally to me, and yeah, I think that's how I got started. I took a break, like most of us did. Went to college. I stopped collecting when Jordan retired the first time, and I went to college. I was into other things. I came back in 2013, and I haven't stopped since.
Amazing. So are there a few cards that you remember from when you were a kid?
Yes. I remember a couple of UDs. I think there's one that's really popular. It's a base card. He's doing a dunk. It's a shot from the bottom. I think it's 1990 or 1992. I'm not sure. I remember those. Also, I remember when Jordan started when cards from Jordan started with the 45. I remember chasing those like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Skybox Emotion, the Intense Insert, the Topps Embossed Gold. All those 45 cards are some of the most impressionable. And Topps Finest and the Refractor with the 45 jersey, just amazing cards.
One card that I could say it's my favorite that instantly takes me back to when I was a kid is the 92-93 Stadium Club, where he's jumping over Ewing, actually on his back. It's a crazy action picture. I would have that on my top 10 as favorite cards of MJ.
Love that card. So you have a lot of high-end Michael Jordan cards. Can you touch on kind of how you formulated your taste?
Yeah, well, my collection has definitely evolved a ton. When I came back in 2013, I was mostly picking up stuff that I liked. I wasn't thinking or I was over concerned about value, scarcity, or anything like that. And as I grew in the hobby, I gravitated towards serial numbered cards. I started looking into packing odds. I started looking to which cards were considered grails, and at an initial stage, I was really focused on just getting cards that I liked in a very high grade.
So there's a lot of other collectors that I would consider your peers. What is it about connecting with those guys and talking about your collection that is intriguing to you?
Well, part of the hobby is not only getting to chase or own cards. I would say a big highlight of this hobby is sharing it. Along the years, I've managed to cultivate great relationships and great friendships. We talk cards daily. I mean, I'm part of a MJ collector group chat on Facebook. We have guys from all parts of the world: Indonesia, Philippines, Australia, the US, Honduras. And I mean, it's just a huge part of collecting. I mean, I can tell you my early days when I came back in 2013, we only had Blow Up. It was kind of impersonal because you didn't get to really know who was behind those accounts. But when social media kicked in, you started like growing this huge network of collectors all over the world, and led me into having great relationships with great MJ collectors, and not only MJ collectors, I mean, just collectors in general, and having more appreciation towards different types of PCs. I mean, every collection is so different, could be so diverse, and players or different types of collectibles. I mean, there's guys that go chase. I mean, their chases going through sets. Others just accumulate insane player collections. We have people like Kiki in Germany, Chris McGill in the U.S., who has become kind of like a mentor to me regarding to Jordan Grails. And we've become really great friends. We talk almost on a daily. Stephen Go in Philippines, Josh, who's a LeBron collector, but we've also cultivated a great relationship. And I mean, it's just a great time to be in this hobby, because we have all this diversity and ability to have just connection with these guys all from different parts of the world.
Well said, my friend. That's a Chris McGill line, by the way. Well said, my friend. So you have some grails, but you also talked about just buying what you loved when you first got into the hobby. Do you have a binder or a side PC with any smaller items?
Yes. I actually keep my original binder from the 90s. There's just a magic to cards in a binder. I just love that experience, just glancing through the cards and not caring about grade or value, just appreciating the cards as they are. And for some reason, just doing that kind of like brings peace to my heart and takes me to a place I really enjoy.
I agree. There's something about a binder that's very therapeutic, just flipping through and seeing, 9, 9, 9. And as you flip through, you can get through 100 cards pretty fast. And that's always a fun experience. I have a few binders that I really enjoy. And I always tell younger people I would start with a binder and just accumulate cards, whether they're simple base cards or some of your favorite players or a player collection. I think there's something about just starting with a binder and then evolving and then eventually having some one touches and some top loaders and things for your better cards. But I think that's a great way to start for younger collectors.
Yeah, I think, younger collectors, the collecting game is so different now than what it was back in the 90s. It has changed dramatically. I think we got to find a way to just like go back to basics, go back to what collecting was originally. I think the money aspect is, in a way, taking the essence out of the hobby, and it's supposed to be fun. We cannot make it too complex, because that could intimidate or it'll not help young kids get into it. And if we complicate things for them, it'll be easy for them just to stick to something else. So I think we have to find a way definitely to go back to OG collecting, and not like when we did, like we're talking about right now, like just going through a binder and just not being concerned about the condition of the card. They were not meant to be in a slab. And it's not that I have something against grading at all, but if we teach them in a young age about grading, they're going to miss a ton, or they're just going to miss a lot of what initially this hobby's meant to be. So,
I completely agree. I think there's something to be said about really just appreciating the beauty of the cards versus focusing on the value.
And I know you have a ton of cards and they're not graded, and I think you set a great example as just appreciating the art and the beauty of the cards, and definitely not be too concerned about the condition.
You're a big basketball fan. Who is your all-time starting five?
Wow. starting five. Well, I would say at the point guard I would go with Magic. At guard, definitely MJ. Forward, I would go with LeBron and Tim Duncan as well. And at center, I'd probably have Kareem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Rodman, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure, as always. Great talking about the hobby and your journey, your collecting, and your mindset. You are a gem of the hobby, and I always appreciate the connection and the attitude that you bring.
I appreciate you for having me. Trust me, it was a pleasure to be here. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I consider you a really good friend in the hobby. We had a blast at last year's national. So I hope to see you next year at the national.
I love it. Well, thank you, brother. Much love, and thank you for the time.
Thank you for having me.
Big thanks to Rodman and the boys for being a part of episode 5, the starting 5. Super grateful for their time and energy and effort that they put into the hobby. Unbelievable people, really great hobbyists, and it was an absolute pleasure connecting with those guys. So to finish the episode, I'm going to give everyone my starting 5. I have Steph Curry as my point guard, Michael Jordan as my shooting guard, LeBron James and Giannis at forward, and Shaq at center. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate your attention and all the love. We'll catch you next time.
Perfect. For the hobby, 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 for the hobby.